Hello and welcome to the Talk Football podcast. It is me, your host Haji, and I'm back for episode 4 of the pod. And today I'm going to be talking about the Saudi Pro League. So obviously it's been in the news quite a lot recently about the Saudi Pro League. So I'm just going to give my thoughts and feelings on it, and we're going to have a bit of a rundown and a look at transfers, the sort of money that's being pushed around, and a bit of league history. So we'll start off with league history on the Saudi Pro League. Been going a lot longer than people probably think. So it was formed in 1976, and it's the typical 3-up, 3-down format. So there is a second tier. I wasn't even aware that there was a second tier. I haven't really looked on it too much, but so 3-up, 3-down on that second tier format. Al Hilal, most successful club, 18 league titles. Al Ittihad with 9, probably the most supported club. Plays at the King Fahd Stadium, regularly get crowds of around about sort of like 40,000, and it does have a capacity of 60,000. And you'd imagine as the popularity and the more stars that come into that league, the crowds will probably start getting bigger. So another club to look at, Al Nazir. They've also got 9 titles. Al Shabab 6. Al Ali have got 3. Al Ettifaq, I hope I'm saying all these right, have got 2, and Al Fatih have 1. So that's all the the history of who's won the league across those. They do have their own domestic cups and stuff like that as well. And of course, it doesn't appear that the Saudi League is going to be going anywhere anytime soon, and you expect more players to probably go there next year. So after we've talked about the transfers, the amount of players that have gone in and out, the sorts of levels of money that's being spent in this league, we'll talk about the potential effect, in my opinions, on what possible effect that the Saudi League could have on the top European leagues going forward. So if we're going to look at the league total so far even, you're looking at around about, as it stands at the point of recording, 194 arrivals, and that is also interleague transfers of players as well, including that, not just players that have come in from major European leagues and other leagues around the world. A total outlay so far, which is just staggering, of just over 636 million euros, or it's crazy amounts of money. Departures, 172 players have moved out of their clubs. So yet again, that's been some inter-club, inter-league rather, transfers, and then obviously players that have moved to other leagues around the world. So the league is a current loss without any kind of like TV revenues and all that being applied, purely just on transfers. That's a £620 million loss. But of course there'll be commercial aspects to that. There will be incomings like, sponsorship deals, TV rights, image rights and stuff like that. And of course, the clubs are going to make money on shirt sales and etc. all around the world. So we're going to have a little bit of a breakdown and look at the top clubs and what they've spent. It's worth bearing in mind that the PIF, the Public Investment Fund, which are the owners of the Newcastle, it's the sovereign wealth fund, they have bought a 75% stake in 4 clubs. Those 4 clubs being, if I write this down right, I'll get all the names right, I'll try. Al Ali, Al Ittihad, Al Hilal, and Al Nazir. So they've bought a 75% controlling stake within those clubs. So I'm not quite sure how that works, where you have one owner owning 4 of the top clubs in the league. I mean, I'm not quite sure how fair that works with in competition stakes. Where one team can go out and spend 90 million euros on a Neymar. And then another one of their teams only gets like a 30 million or whatever to spend on someone else, like or a Fabinho for 46 million, or a Brozovic for 18 million, a Mane for 30 million, a Malcolm for 60 million. Quite how Malcolm goes for 60 million, I don't know. But I'm gonna go through some of those top teams now, and we'll break down the major transfers in and out of the top Saudi clubs and top spending clubs. So I'm going to start off at which is just a staggering amount of money, with Al Hilal. So their expenditure at the moment, as it stands at recording, 289 million euros. So that's and the major signings. So there are other signings, some frees in and out, but the major signings being Neymar 90 million, Malcolm 60 million, Neves 55 million, Milinkovic Savic 40 million, Koulibaly from my club Chelsea 23 million, and Bono from Sevilla 21 million. So I mean, that's a mad amount of money for one. I say that because Chelsea have gone and done it, but in the context of the size as it stands of the Saudi League, I think that's an astonishing amount of money. And then next up on this mad spending spree was, as it stands, because of course, as you know, the transfer window in Saudi is open for quite some time yet. So you've got Al Ali. So they've spent out on Mahrez from City, 35 million, Ibanez 30 million, Saint Maximum from Newcastle 27 million, Edouard Mendy yet again from Chelsea 18.5 million, Frank Keze. Now that was one that completely slipped under my radar. I didn't see that one go through. 12.5 million for Frank Keze, and then of course Bobby Firmino on a free from Liverpool. So that's that's a sizable investment. So their outlay as it stands at the moment is like just over 123 million euro. I'm quoting euros because I've taken all the transfer fact from the transfer market website. So if anything's wrong, blame them. Right, next up you have Al Nazir. And of course they already had Ronaldo from the previous year. So and on top of that they've added Sadio Mane from Munich, 30 million, Fofana 25 million, Brozovic, as I mentioned, 18 million, and then Telles from United for like 4.5 million. So their outlay, yet again, another 77, just over 77 million. Still, phenomenal amount of money. Then we move to clubs that on a slightly smaller scale. In Al Shabab, they brought in Diallo and Quella, 18 million, and was it 3.5 million on Quella, but that was that was from another Saudi club, so it's like one of the interleague transfers that had happened. So I mean 20 odd million, but yet again you'd probably expect them to start spending more. And then you have Al Ettifaq, which of course Stevie G has moved there as their manager. So at the moment they haven't done too much business, mainly some interleague free transfers, but most notable signing obviously was Jordan Henderson, some 14 million euro, and Hendry about 5 million euro. So that's the big movers and shakers. I would expect Ettifaq to probably, with Stevie G in charge, to bring in a few more players. And you would expect some of the other clubs to bring in more players as well. But obviously the PIF seem to have an endless amount of money to be able to spend. So, I mean, it's just insane. That's a crazy amount of money. That's 600 odd million to go into the league. So, my thoughts on that being, what is the impact potentially for the the major European leagues? What impact does this Saudi league? Because it's not going to stop. You'd expect them to come and raid all the top leagues again next year. So looking maybe 1 or 2 years down the line, and I actually had a text from Paul, and he said that Danny Kelly featured on a Spurs pod. I hope he doesn't mind me using this, but featured on a Spurs pod saying that he wouldn't be surprised if Saudi clubs were playing within European competitions from next season. My personal view is I don't see that happening, but never say never in football. But looking long term, and particularly like commercially. So, you know, the TV rights money for the likes of the Premier League, La Liga and all that, particularly the Premier League, obviously, because, you know, it's a vast amount of money that goes into the Premier League TV deal, which, you know, gets highlighted every year because of how much the playoff game from the Championship is worth. And, you know, they say sort of 120 to 140, 150 million that those games are worth just being in the Premier League for the TV rights. So those TV rights are based on the fact that the viewership wants to watch the best league in the world, in my opinion, and with the vast amount of quality that goes into that. So if you start stripping, and this goes for all European leagues really, and all major leagues around the world, if you start stripping, you know, your viewable assets out of those leagues, then surely as a commercial product, your value isn't what it's going to be, or isn't what it was. So could we get to a stage where the TV companies then start saying, well, you know, hang on a minute, we haven't got the Neymars, the Ronaldos, you know, the future stars going forward. We haven't got those players in the league. So, you know, people are tuning in to watch the Saudi league because this is where, you know, all the star players are. So we're not going to pay the money that we were paying last year. And where do you go for? Where do you come from as one of the league organisations as a potential argument against that? Because if you haven't got the best players, then your viewers are going to go to where the best players are playing. Now, give it maybe not, you know, within the next 1 or 2 years. I would think that within, say, 4 to 5 years, if the Saudis are still interested and still doing what they're doing, then there could be certainly a problem commercially for, you know, the leagues around Europe to sell their products on, because people are going to go and watch where they're going to go and watch, and where they're going to go and watch is where all the big players are playing. But I think that there could be a potential knock-on effect for that, and in terms of, say, for a positive for young players, particularly at Premier League clubs, because I think obviously less you know, import players that are coming into those clubs, there could be more potential for academy players to be given a chance, because the chances of younger academy players, you know, within 1 or 2 years being sort of like picked up and taken over to, or given opportunities maybe to go to places like the Saudi League or whatever, or MLS if more money keeps getting pumped into that as well. You can't forget them, obviously, as a player on the scene, although they tend to be signing, obviously, players more towards the end, the star players anyway, more towards the end of careers. But I think that there could be a knock-on effect that younger players maybe could, within the next maybe, you know, 3-4 years, start getting more of an opportunity at their clubs, due to the fact that there's far more, you know, expensive, high-profile players potentially going into the Saudi League. So that's my take on the Saudi League at the moment. And obviously, we'll keep revisiting this because we don't know exactly how many more players are going to end up there. So we'll kind of follow this up in like with a part 2. And we'll be looking at, you know, any other current transfers that have gone through. Now, I do believe, and I'd have to double check it, but I think that their transfer window remains open for about 3 or 4 weeks after most of the major European leagues close their windows. So there could be you could get to a stage where obviously they're going to still be active. Clubs that will receive bids for players that are just, you know, maybe those potential bids would be, you know, too lucrative to turn down. But of course, then you're in a situation where you're not going to be able to replace a player that you're selling. So that could potentially open up a spot early doors for maybe a player at an academy who's, you know, 17, 18, 19 years of age that wouldn't probably have got a look in, might have got the odd cup game here and there. And maybe, just maybe, that those players will end up getting a chance, because half of your team's been sold to Saudi. So that's my take on it. I would love to see across any of the posts, particularly social media, where the video for this will be shared, obviously, people's thoughts and comments, and who maybe they think the next big, you know, players that could end up over there in the Saudi League. So that's me, Hodgie. I know it's only a little short episode, so But I thought I would cover this. I think it's quite on topic at the moment, particularly with the sheer amount of players that are going there. And I still think there'll maybe be one or two more significant high-profile players. I'm not talking like name or high-profile, but I still think that there will be certain a few more. Let's just say a few more high-profile players that will end up going Saudi League. So that's me riding solo, Hodgie, talking about the Saudi League and the potential impact going forward of what could happen. Don't forget to get in contact with the podcast. We've got some nice, exciting podcasts coming up. Hopefully we've got Paul lined up coming back on. We're going to catch up with Andy Reid again. United got turned over by Spurs today, so we've got a happy Spurs fan in Paul, and probably a not so happy Manchester United fan. Hopefully we're going to have Adam James coming up talking about Derby. So we're looking at maybe potentially doing that first week of September to get him on. Obviously Derby haven't had the greatest start at the moment. Quite a few fans are already calling for the manager to go. So we're going to catch up with Derby in League One and potentially what their season could look like, because at the moment it's not looking particularly great, but it's early doors, a long way to go, a 46 game season. So yeah, again, like I say, don't forget, hit the link that will be in all of the podcasts bios, whether it's on the TikTok, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Spotify, the Apple Podcast, the Amazon Music, and if you're a fan of any clubs, particularly clubs outside the Premier League, we are live on TikTok now. So I have had a comment on there saying where will Ipswich finish? I don't know. It's early doors. I don't really think you can judge anything after. Maybe we'll look at, say, after 8 or 9 games. But if you're a fan of any of those clubs and you want to come on and talk about your club, you're more than welcome to. I do it normally over Zoom, and we have a conversation about your club for 30-40 minutes. You get off your chest everything you want to say. It is as simple as that. It's just two people having a chat about football. There's nothing to fear. You're not being broadcast to millions. We're not that big yet, hopefully. Fingers crossed. You never know, one day. But it's all about you guys as fans, one of the pod and fans of football. And you can come on and have your say. The only things I do ask is that if you are under the age of 18, you'll have to have obviously your parents' consent. But I can arrange that and have a consent form signed by them virtually with a confirmation, and we can get you on if you want to talk. Now you can even come on with your parents, and you can both talk about your clubs or whatever. So yeah, do that. Don't forget. You can do the old-fashioned way. You can even email the show on talkfootballpdc@gmail.com. I'd love particularly to hear from people that run grassroots football clubs, particularly local football clubs that run like little leagues and stuff like that. I'd love to get you on and talk about your club. And if you want to, although we don't have a massive listenership here, but we are growing nice and steadily. And if you want to come on and promote your club, particularly to try and get other locals in your area to come in, more than happy to have you. So get in contact with me on the show, drop messages on TikTok here, and you can also, like I said, email, and as long as you hit that link, you'll get to the link tree and you'll find everything you need there. So thank you from me, Hodgie, your host on the Talk Football podcast, and we'll be joining you again for another new episode of this season 4, which we're off to a flyer, we're off to a cracker. See you very, very soon.